Good evening. I'm Lisa DeSisto, publisher of the Portland Press Herald. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at Maine Voices Livestream. I hope we found everyone happy, healthy, safe, and hopefully cool tonight as well. Bob Keyes just shut off his air conditioner, so we may have to encourage him to turn it on later if we see these starting to visibly melt. Thank you to H.M. Payson, our presenting sponsor, who's been with us from the beginning, whether it's in real life or live stream. They're always there to support us. Stroudwater Lodge, Portland Downtown, and Hub Furniture. We appreciate their support. It allows us to bring it to you free tonight and also supports our journalism at the Press Herald. Special welcome to our Press Herald subscribers if you're with us tonight. And if you'd like to subscribe, please go to pressherald.com/subscribe. And now let me introduce you to tonight's host and guests. Bob Keyes writes about the visual and performing arts for the Portland Press Herald, Maine Sunday Telegram. If you missed Bob's wonderful story from last Sunday on how a 106-year-old painting, Jackie, by artist George Bellows made it back to Maine, go back and read that story. You won't regret it. Bob is a Maine treasure, a gifted storyteller, and tonight you can see his skills as an interviewer. Daniel Minter is an internationally exhibited artist, visual storyteller, and illustrator. He has illustrated more than a dozen children's books and twice commissioned to create stamps for the U.S. Postal Service and co-founded the Portland Freedom Trail. He teaches at the Maine College of Art, and you can currently see his work at the Portland Museum of Art's Bicentennial Exhibition. Marcia Minter has spent her career as an executive creative director for some of the world's most iconic brands, including an extended time as vice president creative director with LLB. Currently, she serves on the Maine Arts Commission, the board of directors for Maine Media Workshops and College, Portland Ovations, and is a trustee at the Portland Museum of Art. Together, they co-founded the Indigo Arts Alliance, a nonprofit dedicated to the creative cultivation of artists of African descent. Please welcome to your screens, Bob Keyes and the Minters.
Well, good evening, everybody. Lisa, thank you very much for that introduction. Daniel and Marcia, welcome. And everybody, welcome tonight. It's nice to see a lot of familiar names showing up on the screen. Thanks for joining us and spending an hour with us. Daniel and Marcia, I'd like to just say thanks again for joining us. You've always been gracious about welcoming me into your home, and tonight's an opportunity for the Press Herald to welcome you into our virtual home. I'm going to start in a conversation tonight about Indigo Arts Alliance. It's now a little over a year old, and Marcia, I'm going to ask the first question of you. I want to know how Indigo began, what the genesis of the organization was, and why it was important for you on a personal level to start Indigo.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all those who have joined us this evening. Bob, Indigo Arts Alliance has really been a dream of ours for as long as we've known each other, which is close to 30 years. And so we have always held on to this idea of having a space that has both a focus on serious art making for people that are serious about art, but also is a communal space where people can come together and really benefit from sharing their life experiences and their story as well as their practice. And so in all the various places where we've lived, we met many years ago in Atlanta. Since then, we've lived in Seattle, New York, Chicago, and then in Brazil, and then in here. Over all of those decades and all of those travels, whenever we were in conversation with artists, but particularly artists of the African diaspora, and we were having rich conversations, it always ended in wanting more. It always ended in a statement around, I wish we had a space. I wish there was a place. I wish that we could be in community more together, particularly for artists who are really focused on developing and building their career and maintaining and cultivating lifelong relationships. So it's in that spirit that we created Indigo. And it is, and for that reason, we created Indigo. So as was described, the mission is really to build global connections between Black and Brown artists, but really the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, that are all welcome and supported by the work of Indigo, which is to amplify the voices and the creative vision of artists of color in centering Black and Brown artists. And what we mean when we talk about amplification really happens in two ways for us at Indigo. One, at the core of what we're doing is our artist residency program, where we invite visiting artists from across the world to come here and work in their practice. But while they're here, we ask them to dedicate a percentage of their time to mentoring a local Black or Brown artist. Additionally, while they're here, we ask them to engage in exchanges with the general public so that everyone is welcome and so that everyone benefits from the opportunity to have broader exposure to the brilliance of BIPOC people and to the creativity and the intellectual discourse that happens as a result. So our work is, we are not a gallery, we are not a performing arts space, we are an incubator space that's really about the front end of the process around ideas and concepts and creating those connections. And then the other side of what we're doing is focused on collaborations and partnerships with other cultural institutions and organizations across the country, but particularly here in Maine, so that the artists that we are working with, so that some of the special projects that we do on behalf of the community have a platform and have access to platforms that have not traditionally been easily accessible for us. And so we are intentionally trying to be a part of addressing underrepresentation and equity in the arts, and also being a space and a place that is about incubating ideas and concepts and then disseminating those largely.
One of your partnerships was recently in the news with the organization Portland Ovations, and I believe the Portland Immigrant Welcome Center. Just because it's been in the news a little bit lately, can you explain what that partnership is about and how that is an example of some of the things you're talking about?
Yes, well, that one is to be determined in terms of fleshing out the details, but Amy Petrin and Amy Petrin is the executive director of Portland Ovations. We started talking over a year ago now about the idea of collaborating and how our missions could really work in collaboration and in service to each other. We have collaborated many times over the years in a number of different ways together. And so this presented an opportunity for Indigo to participate in the writing of a grant that Portland Ovations was eventually awarded from the National Endowment for the Arts. But it facilitates an opportunity for us to engage those national and international BIPOC artists and bringing those artists here, and then continuing along the spirit of Indigo and in partnership with Portland Ovations to do a combination of things, which is to be able to utilize Indigo's space in service to a residency for the artists as they are workshopping and thinking through ideas that will eventually be presented through Portland Ovations. And so that's the premise of what we're doing. And we have pre-identified a selection of artists that we are hoping to work with and solidify over the coming months. And then in regard to the Immigrant Welcome Center, we actually kicked off our opening in partnership with a couple of events with the Immigrant Welcome Center. And we've also since partnered with many other organizations. Currently, we are partnering with I'm Your Neighbor Books and Diverse Book Finder on the Beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival, which I know that we'll be talking about. We also have done some international collaborations One of which is we had a virtual artist who was initially intended to be with us physically here in the space in the spring, Nugent Smith, who was a brilliant multidisciplinary artist working in both visual art and performing arts. And we ended up designing a series of symposiums that we presented in partnership with the Perez Art Museum in Miami. And so we are doing more and more, both locally and nationally, which was also the intent of the organization at its start.
Are you finding because of COVID, you can do more of that sort of broader programming sooner than you might have otherwise?
Well, I don't know. I think the short, quick answer is yes. But as I mentioned, our initial vision was always that we would be an international organization that's based here in Portland, so that we always, at the outset, our mission statement, our vision statement, and when you go onto our website and you read about us, we consistently are talking about global connections. So that was always a part of something we've been cultivating. Our board and our advisory circle are national and international, so that leadership and those inputs are coming from that space. So that there was already an undergirding for us to be able to work in that spirit. But I think more recently with COVID, it just kind of sped that up a bit more recently.
You are doing this interview tonight from the Indigo space, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So this is a studio? Are you in a studio?
Yep, we're in the studio. The studio, I'll let Daniel describe the overall space, but we're right now in Daniel's part of the space.
Okay. Daniel, go for it. Tell me about the space, the physical space.
Well, the space itself is a very flexible space. It's a 4,000 square foot box that has two smaller enclosed studios within it. One of the studios I occupy, and the other studio the artist in residence occupies. And then the rest of the space is flexible for other artists or other types of events. We break the space up so that different artists can do different things within the space. We're mostly geared toward visual artists and the needs of visual artists, but we also can accommodate other types of artists as well. We may not do it as well, but we are flexible enough to accommodate various artists.
Mm-hmm. And actually, we have accommodated already. We have creative writers. We also have hosted choreographers. And we also have some music composition and musicians that will be part of our upcoming roster of visiting artists as well. So we are multidisciplinary in terms of the visiting artists that we host and the community artists that have been a part and will continue to be a part of the work that we are doing here.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe I saw Samuel James will be an artist in residence.
Yes,
Is that right?
he'll be
Portland
in residence the month of February. Yes.
What do you envision for that? How might that look? What will that play out like?
Sam will, he came into this, and Sam, he's going to I'm sure he's going to do something that we have not seen before. He's pretty excited about the opportunity and the openness of the space. We've been trying to collaborate on some things for a while, but he mostly wants to work with sound in the whole space.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so the only commitment from the visiting artist is that they come prepared to explore. That's the purpose of a residency. It's really about having the freedom of thought and time to be able to imagine and bring new ideas to your work and explore and experiment and fail and then try again. So we don't impose you have to produce something by the time your residency is over. This is really about an incubation period for folks. The only piece that we ask is the time dedicated to mentorship and some public engagement collaborations with predetermined partners.
How does the virtual residency work? How are you adapting?
Oh, quite well. We are so excited about how that went. With COVID, just like everyone else, we were just kind of for a moment dumbfounded with the realization that we were just getting our groove, or at least getting our move on. And then all of a sudden COVID hit. And I think I said this to you, Bob, at one point. For us, it felt like fight or flight, because as a new organization, we just couldn't imagine an undetermined amount of months not doing anything. And also, as a new organization, we're so excited about what we're doing that we've been so committed and working so hard to kind of plan what we're doing that we couldn't see a way to stop that train, and nor did we want to. So we just immediately went into the fight mode and just pivoted into visioning how we could present virtually. And I think that in part coming from my background working in various different modalities in terms of how you disseminate content, it was relatively easy for me to envision and also know who to talk to help us continue along the path of being able to present our programming that enabled us to react pretty quickly. So our next up visiting artist, actually we had a little gap. So we had a period where we immediately pivoted because we had Sean Alonzo Harris, who is an incredible photographer that many people know. And we had Moon Ingwanema Shar, who's a brilliant poet, who were 2 weeks away from completing their 2-month residency. And so we decided to launch Facebook Live and Instagram Live events where they could continue to talk about and extrovert the work that they were doing together and show and share. And then we decided that we would initiate a period of what we called Indigo Presents, where we wanted to showcase some of the local artists, Black and brown artists who are doing important work, particularly in the space of the performing arts, and give them a platform through Instagram Live to be able to show and showcase their work. And then the other important part of it is that we wanted to be a part of being able to literally support the practices of work. So the stipends that we have been able to pay the artist. We have already done the work of raising that money, whether it was through grants or other fundraising, and we knew that particularly the artist communities of color here needed that. And so we created Indigo Presents as a space before some of our major programming initiatives kicked off to be able to respond immediately, to give them a platform and also just some additional funding toward their work. And then Nugent Smith was our next up visiting artist anyway. And so he reached out to us and said, hey, I have an exhibition at the Perez. I still would love to brainstorm. Let's do that. And so collectively we did, and we came up with the idea for a theme that was really around how are visual artists and creatives responding in this moment of COVID, particularly Black and brown creatives. And then what does that mean? And we did that and had incredible followership. And those Facebook Live symposiums are actually up currently still on our Facebook page, and you can still view them at any point. They'll be up indefinitely. And the first one had over 1,000 views and viewers on that particular one, and the subsequent ones have also had significant followership and nationally and even internationally having engagement. And those were symposiums where we put together panels of people that were national and in some cases located in Puerto Rico and other parts of the world, of the diaspora, to engage in those conversations. And then we also were simultaneously creating the content that has since become the Beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival. And so we have been straight out, nonstop, burning the candle at both ends, making sure that we have kept the wheels more than in motion. What we've learned is that it actually is 10 times more work to pivot online, because you have to redesign and think about how you're representing and packaging and then sharing the content on those platforms in ways that are much more complex and rely on technology in ways that you have to know what you're doing and how to leverage those elements pre the event, during the event, and post the event, and all the other ancillary elements that go along with it, and the additional kind of stakeholders and people that are involved in the process. So it's a lot, but it's been well worth it, because I think that it's really helped to broaden our awareness about the work that we're doing. And it certainly has resulted in a larger footprint for us, I think, nationally. So I guess that's for us been the upside, if you can say there's an upside to something as horrible as COVID, and certainly as traumatic as the recent uprising events that we've all been experiencing.
The book festival has challenged you in the sense that it's a virtual festival, but there's also a physical component in that you're distributing books locally. So you've had to do a little bit of both.
And that was always the design. The book distribution was the key reason why we were doing the festival. So we designed the festival originally as a physical festival. It was going to be a street festival, but the key premise of it was to address literacy and to have a mechanism to celebrate the beauty of Blackness, and to be able to bring those pieces together by creating this festival that was really about celebrating Black stories and disseminating those stories broadly, but also putting those stories directly in the hands of Black young children. And so meaning, but to create and help them build their own home libraries. And so our initial grants that we wrote to request always had that component of building the home libraries of Black children in particular. And also in doing that, we know, particularly through Krista Aronson's research at the Diverse Book Finder, that as young as infancy, when Black and brown children and children of color see themselves reflected in stories and reflected in the visual imagery, that it has an immediate and a significant impact on their issues of self-confidence, issues of kind of just overall mental and development regarding health, but also literacy, direct impact, positive impacts on literacy. And so that was the underpinning of why we wanted to do the festival. And then we built everything else around that goal in terms of celebrating Black stories, centering Black families, making sure that Black children were able to access these materials and see it and have these imageries, these positive imageries reflected, and their life stories reflected as well. And so that was what we did there. So we started off wanting to give away 300 books. We have now, as of last week, given away 1,700 books across Portland and Lewiston. And we have also, in addition to the books, we have given away and custom created activity templates, arts and crafts activities, dance along videos, as well as swag bags full of extra goodies of art supplies that Love Lab helped us to source and fund, and also stickers and other bookmarks and just a really cool tote bag.
So there's been no slowdown.
There's been no slowdown. So yeah, beautifulblackbird.com is really the home base for the festival, where all of the videos are posted weekly and all of the learning content. We have an educator's toolkit there so that educators can use the materials. And all of what each of the, we created, I mean, we selected 9 books to spotlight, all of which are created by Black people, and either the writers or the illustrators or both. And those books, at the end of each of those read-alongs, there is a message from the creators so that the children and their families and the general public can see that these creators are professional writers and professional illustrators that are making and creating and these books, so that they look like them, so that they know that these are role models and these are real careers, you know, that they can have and aspire to as well.
I would be remiss not to mention that this festival honors, to some degree, Ashley Bryan, of course, who
With that
is
question, yeah.
illustrator, writer, artist extraordinaire from Maine. Daniel, could you talk about Ashley and perhaps his role in your life? I don't know if he was a mentor to you or not, but you've certainly become friends with him.
He is a mentor to me. And even before I knew Ashley Bryan, he was a role model. But the role that Ashley plays is much more, I think, than a mentor, simply because of the life experience that he has and the way that he carries, the way that he moves through life is an inspiration to me as an artist, as an illustrator, and just as a human being. And so this festival, the Beautiful Blackbird Festival, is, to me, it's all about, you know, it all blooms from Ashley, and we deliver the material in the spirit of Ashley Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel, this is an opportunity to talk about your work. I want to talk about your illustration work as well, but you have a lot of work in town, in Portland right now, all over town, both in the streets and in the museum and in galleries. Let's start with the Green Hut show, the show States of ? At Green Hut Galleries. I know you're doing an artist talk Thursday night about that, but if you would just tell us what's in the show, and there's a lot of new work. I'm interested in some of the inspiration for the pieces in the show.
Well, this show has been sort of a long time in the making. Little pieces of it have come through in other parts of my work, but this one is mostly primarily a print show, print collage of images that are surrounding the ideas of currency. And the initial currencies of this of the economy of this country were Black people, Black bodies, and those ideas are the ones that I'm playing with in this body of work. I'm using simple imagery that relates to small historical moments, and then mostly images of the currency and the presidency, so that there's a relationship seen between those things, and the ideas that we see and handle this currency every day, that's rooted in our subjugation. The elements are still there. The repercussions of that are still there, even though we are participating in this economy. That history is still part of the way we negotiate money and currency and the value of Black lives and Black bodies.
And looking at the show last week, I noticed the dates on almost all this work is 2020. Have you made this work since COVID, and is some of it as recent as the last month or two, or just What has your schedule been like with this body of work?
I printed a lot of these. I carved the blocks from them a long time ago, but printed them just since COVID. And then the collaging and building of this is just since COVID. I've done, and there are a couple of other pieces that were, I guess, studies, you know, that were done last year. But really, it's well, really the collage pieces are this year.
And you just installed another piece with Ryan Adams and T.J. DeBaccarat up on Upper Congress Street at a former gas station. And I'm forgetting the name of that piece, but could you explain why you wanted to do that outdoor public art installation, especially now?
Well, it's not that I necessarily wanted to do an outdoor art installation. It was just that the opportunity presented itself to make a statement out in public at a time when I felt that the artist's voice was needed. And it was an opportunity to collaborate with Ryan Adams and T.T. Baccarat. That piece is called Counting from 13, you know, which is a direct reference to the 13th Amendment and the emancipation from slavery. And from that point, once Black people were emancipated, there began to be Jim Crow laws or laws that were designed to keep us to remove us from citizenship, to make citizenship another barrier, and to keep us from benefiting from the things that were offered to citizens. So those systems were put in place after emancipation, and they were, at that time, they were mostly in the form of lynchings. Now, the lynchings that happen are not necessarily with a rope, but they are still based in the same ideologies.
Could you explain the inspiration for some of the physical imagery that you used to create some of the context for that piece?
Oh, the imagery that I use is a response to learning about Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Initiative and the new national memorial in Alabama. It's very simple, very direct, and very representational, whereas the simple rectangle represents a body and a body hanging. And then the number of those bodies is 13 to represent the 13th Amendment. Simple as that. And below that, Ryan Adams did a statement from a poem, and the statement refers to lynching.
The rope.
Yes, the rope they bear is long. I wasn't going to say it just because I like for people to look at the text to find the text within it.
I understand what you're saying. Yes, you want to pay some attention and figure it out. It's a very compelling piece.
Yes, and then T.T. Baccarat's piece, his piece references very, very current moments, you know, of the simple, nonviolent, quiet protest of kneeling, initiated by Colin Kaepernick. And the outrage that caused. And so his piece is at the far end of counting from 13. Ryan and our piece, my piece and Ryan's, we want to make that connection so that it's not forgotten that there is a long history of this behavior and that none of these incidents are isolated.
It's a very dramatic piece, and it's a very welcome piece up on Congress Street and in Portland. And another example of just a quick response. The opportunity came, it was offered fairly recently to you, and you figured it out pretty quickly and turned that around. A couple more things I want to ask you about, Daniel, before we move on to other topics quickly. I'm interested in the piece you have at Maine Historical, The Governor's Tea, which references Malaga Island. That piece happens to just be up now as well. Another example of your work on display and in a museum gallery setting. Malaga Island is a history that many of us who have lived in Maine for a while probably knew peripherally, but this is a great example of how artists in the last 10 years or so have really enlightened us about the true history of Malaga. And your work and the work of Myron Beasley and Theaster Gates and other artists has really brought some light onto Malaga. And so just as someone who appreciates art as a resident, I thank you for that. And with that setup, I'd like you to talk about The Governor's Tea, why you created it, and what it's about, if you don't mind.
Well, The Governor's Tea, that piece is was my attempt to look at the remnants, the physical remnants that Malaga has left, and to respond to it in a contemporary way, with from figures that were seem somewhat period and somewhat contemporary at the same time, to take us out of that realm of history of, but without disremembering that history. Therefore, I wanted to make sure that there were physical remnants represented within the piece, as well as the centerpiece is a piece that deals with the idea of turning white, of becoming visibly white, whereas many of the descendants of the obvious descendants from Malaga Island that are in the area, that still live in the area, are visibly recognized as white. Yet a lot of the people in the area still call them derogatory names, because they are familiar with the history. But also, I just wanted to examine that idea of turning visibly white, but still remaining attached to the history.
Did you create that piece specifically for the show at Maine Historical?
No, I did not create it specifically for the show at Maine Historical. I created it just before.
Okay. And you have you have a piece, at least one piece up at the Portland Museum of Art right now that I believe was created for the biennial a couple of years ago, and that was part of the purchase. Just because it's up right now and folks can see it, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about that.
That piece was the piece that's at the, well, there are two pieces there. One of them was created for the bicentennial. And I created that one, just, I finished it, during the time of COVID. So that one was created for this exhibit. And it is also a look at the story of Malaga Island from, to look at the history and embed your contemporary self in that history and the effects that it has on people born, even people born in this century, the effects that history has on them. And to draw you into it, to pull you into it. There are even windows in which you enter
It draws on actual artifacts, right?
Yes, they're artifacts and windows in which you enter the piece.
Do you see yourself going back to Malaga for work quite a bit? Is this the beginning of an exploration for you that could lead to a big series of work, do you think?
Well, okay, well, when I'm doing the Malaga Island work, it's not just Malaga Island. You know, it's Malaga Island is just is a macrocosm. It's of things that have happened all over this country. You know, whenever a lot of times when I talk about Malaga Island, I reference you know, well, there were small communities, Black communities in the South, in the Midwest, and some out west that during that same time that the people were removed from Malaga, Black communities were being destroyed all over this country. So it was not isolated. So, and the reason why I'm drawn to Malaga is because of the materials. The remnants are there that make that connection, and it was pretty much untouched for 100 years. And so going back to that is visceral. I mean, there's a presence that you feel when you walk onto the island.
There's a presence in that work as well, and you can feel that. We are getting close to turning things over to audience questions, but I do want to ask before we do that. I know you have this career, Daniel, as a painter and sculptor and whatnot, but you're also an illustrator, and this year you won a Caldecott honor for the book Going Down Home with Daddy. First of all, congratulations on that. You've illustrated dozens of books, and your illustrations are as in demand as anything that you do, I presume. How do you balance your careers? How do you make everything work in harmony with each other when all of your work is so in demand?
I'm working toward them being the same thing. I work, the children's book work, illustration work ends up in a different place, but it begins at the same, you know, it begins the same place as the work that I do in the galleries. I'm looking to blend them slightly more and more and more as I go. But the children's book part, I really do that as a responsibility. I feel it is a responsibility to tell stories, to pass on stories. And the picture books is an amazing way to pass on those stories. I learned stories, you know, orally, many stories orally, they were passed on. And that's one of the reasons why I love spending time with Ashley Bryan so much. You know, he's always giving us stories, giving us poems. And I feel like since I am an artist, I need to pass on stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing so. Strawberry, I'm not sure if you're there. If so, do we have some questions ready to queue up from the audience in the last 15 minutes or so?
Plenty of questions.
I figured we might. Thank you for keeping track of all that.
Oh, no problem. A question from Mark Aronson. Where can Daniel's work be seen besides the PMA?
The work can be seen right now at Green Hut Gallery on Middle Street.
And I'll give a plug right now, Daniel. You're going to do an artist talk, I believe, at 7 o'clock Thursday through
That's
Green
right.
Hut, correct?
That's correct.
So there's an opportunity to go far deeper into the work on Thursday night if you wish.
Question from Jessica Ruthier. Can you tell us if you have any active museum partnerships or collaborations?
With the, you mean with the PMA, those types of collaborations?
I believe so.
Yes.
Can you elaborate and talk a little bit about what they might be?
Well, they commissioned a piece last year before last. They commissioned a piece that's in the museum now, and the bicentennial piece they asked if I would contribute something about the Malaga work that I do. And so I wanted those pieces to be connected in some way. So I did the wood carvings, the painted carvings.
Nice. Question from Alicia Gamow. Once COVID-19 is controlled, will you be doing outreach to local schools?
Outreach to local schools, Marcia?
Is that in regard to Indigo or to Daniel's practice as an artist, or both?
I think they probably mean the Indigo Arts Alliance.
Okay. Well, Indigo Arts Alliance, we are mostly working with people who have reached a point age-wise where they are focused as serious artists or serious about art making. And that typically is at kind of the university level and above through however old. But in terms of the work that we've done with younger groups, outside of the beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival, we are sometimes hosting small groups. Of course, when we're open again, after COVID gives us some relief, we have previously engaged after school groups and some groups that are part of like the Homer Fellows at the Portland Museum of Art, who are a group of high school age kids. We have hosted a group from the College of the Atlantic. We've hosted a couple of other groups from community organizations to be able to come and hear directly from some of the visiting artists or from Daniel, or to participate in a workshop. So those are ways in which Indigo Arts engages with younger folks.
Awesome. This is an anonymous question, but what artists are inspiring you right now?
Wow. What artists are inspiring me right now? It's been really difficult for me to stop thinking about the work and the things I learned from David Driscoll. And just even in thinking about the work that I just put together for the show at Green Hut, the collage work, and thinking about that, it's I've just been thinking about the lessons I've learned from David Driscoll.
I just want to add to that David Driscoll was our senior advisor as we were developing the foundation and the mission of Indigo, and we miss him dearly. He was our cornerstone that we ran things by and asked his opinion, and he was an incredible advocate and supporter of our work during the development period and certainly once we were operational. So that's been a hard loss.
David died in March, and I believe one of his paintings is part of the bicentennial show as well, at the Portland Museum of Art. Yes.
How do you find or select the student artists or mentees?
Well, a few different ways, but one of the ways primarily right now is that we have a partnership with the Maine College of Art. So pre our opening, Laura Freed, the president of Mecca, reached out to us and asked if had learned about what our intentions were and what we were doing, and was very interested in thinking about how we could support the students of color that are students there. And because Daniel teaches there, and because obviously we weren't going to live in this community and not be concerned about the careers and the development and just the human spirits, you know, of the BIPOC community of artists there, we co-wrote a grant together that has since been funded by the Crew Foundation. And it's a matching grant. It's a $25,000 annual matching grant. And it helps with our paying of our stipends for the mentor-mentee pairings. And it also helps with funding our internship program. And it is available to the Mecca community, alumni, faculty, MFA, and undergraduate students. So that's one way that we fund some of our mentees and our interns. But then we also look to the larger community of color for both our mentees and collaborators, and also at large, you know, looking at the broader wealth of kind of student population that is here, and just BIPOC artists that are emerging or looking to build and cultivate relationships with professional artists. We are, that is how we source and identify people through networks, and through other people in the community that we are familiar with, that are working and that are meeting new people. And then also through those channels that we've mentioned in terms of other institutions and cultural organizations.
That's great. That kind of leads right into the next question. Could you talk about the process at Indigo of choosing or engaging visiting artists?
Oh, well, so our first 2 years, we decided we're going to be an invitational, because we wanted to establish what we mean by professional artist. We wanted to establish a standard for the quality and caliber of artists that we were bringing and presenting to the community, because we wanted those visiting artists to have something really meaningful to offer as mentors. You know, we wanted those artists to be able to have something really meaningful to offer when they are doing public engagement events or serving as visiting artist instructors for one of the colleges or universities, which has happened quite often. And so it was important for us to reach out and leverage our advisory circle and our board and the leadership and the awareness and the work and the resources that they have out in the world to help us identify our first 2 years, so that we could make sure that we were positioned to fulfill our mission out of the gate, and make sure that the mentee piece was actually going to be rewarding for people that were participating in it, and that the community would get a new, fresh perspective and learn in deeper, broader ways about the depth, breadth, and scope of Black creative brilliance and intellectual thought leadership in the space of the intersection between visual arts, multidisciplinary art making, scholarship, social justice, and social activism. And so that is another part that's critically important for everyone to know about the work that Indigo is doing, is that it is social justice work. We are doing it because what we know is art making, is creative thinking, but it is still fundamentally social justice work, because we are about diversity, equity, representation, and amplification of our voices.
Great. I'm going to combine a couple of questions, because we've gotten a few variations of this, but what is next for Indigo Arts and Daniel?
Start with Daniel.
What's next for, I'm currently working on a book, another book, and working on a larger exhibit that will be at the CMCA coming up as well. It was supposed to be this, well, it'll be coming up as soon as it's possible to have an exhibit at the CMCA. I'll start working on that. That's a pretty big exhibit for me. And I'm also working on a working on a sculpture that will be in a sculpture park in Wisconsin. And also the same situation there. It's just that I can't travel there this year, so I'll start on that when I'm able to travel there.
Where can you buy the children's books and probably your upcoming book that Daniel has created?
I'll jump in there because just to follow up on the question about what's next for Indigo. So our Beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival launched the end of May, and it runs through August 31st. And so every Friday we release a new video, a new book that is featured part of the festival, but all of the content, as I mentioned, continues to live and is accessible through the beautifulblackbird.com website, which includes activities and crafts and templates and all kinds of things that you can download too. So that continues to go on. And then also we will be having further conversations with a number of different potential partners in addition to Portland Ovations that we are working on some projects for 2021 and 2022. And we will likely have another virtual artist in residency coming up in late September with an incredible writer named Shay Youngblood. Yeah, and in the meantime, we are digging in and working on you know, just strengthening our infrastructure and all of the other things you need to do as a new organization.
Daniel, where do you get the books?
Oh, you can get the books at Print bookstore, and you can also get them different places online. But I think the first go-to place would be Print here in Portland, on at the head of India Street on Congress.
And in the meantime, they're of course closed due to COVID, but on the website, Beautiful Blackbird website, there is a link to their portal to be able to purchase the books directly from Print.
And I know we're getting close on time, so I'm gonna do another question that we had a couple people ask this. What are some concrete ways that community members can support the Beautiful Blackbird Festival and Indigo?
Oh, well, the most concrete way is to go to indigoartsalliance.me and donate. Again, we are a new organization, and particularly during this time where arts funding is really challenged because there is so much happening, it is a real fear about sustainability. And so donating to help us remain viable and do the work that we're doing to be able to grow our infrastructure is critically important. So I would say that that is the main way that you can help us at this moment. In regard to the festival, the site that we've created there is also a donate portal because we hope to do something similar next year. And so we wanted to start the fundraising process for the festival so that we can bring something like this to the community again next year. So please support the arts, support Black and Brown artists and the work that we're doing globally and locally in service to our creative community, voices that have not historically, particularly here in Maine, been seen and heard as much as they really should be. So yes, donate.
Strawberry, any more questions, or should we wrap that up?
No, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think we can go ahead and wrap it right up.
Daniel and Marcia, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. It's great to always catch up, but it's good to have an extended amount of time to actually talk about the work in some detail, both of Daniel, your particular work, and Indigo in general. And
thank you,
everybody
Bob.
out there listening, thanks.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.